This is take two. Hopefully it's working this time.
Hello, our friends.
Oh, yes, this is wonderful. There is no echo this time.
Amazing.
Woo!
All right. So I was thinking that every time I come on, I always think about where are our listeners? What are they doing? I know we have someone who listens while they walk. I know we have people that listen while they drive. What's going on out there? So anyway, I say that to say that, guys, jump on our Facebook group, Circle of the Goddesses. I would love to hear from you.
Yes. And we talk about this. I mean, obviously we have our local tribe that listens, but I love when I go on and see like someone listens in Mongolia and someone listens in, at one point we were ranked in Sweden. I'm like, how crazy is that people in Sweden are listening to us? But
it just goes to show the world is getting smaller and smaller, right? Like
it absolutely is. Absolutely is.
And I love that the message is truly international, because that's really the big important part, right? Is that what we're talking about is empowerment. We're talking about being your best self. And that has nothing to do with culture, religion, politics, or anything else, right? It just has to do with this human experience. So let's take a second. Thank you guys so much for listening from everywhere. We're so excited and so appreciative of you all.
Well, and I think that's something too that people think, well, at least in the United States, I know a lot of people think that people in other parts of the world are so different. And when it comes down to it, yes, we have cultural differences, but we're all human and we're all one. And we're the same. We're the same, but different.
I love it. So what's been going on with you? What's up? What's happening?
So I want to tell you this story about the other night in my house. I was thirsty, and so I went to the kitchen and I thought I poured myself a full glass of water to take back with me. But because it was dark, I couldn't really see. And so I stuck my finger in the cup to make sure, that there was the right amount of water in it. And I was like, there's no water in my cup. And I pour some more water in and I stick my finger in again and I check again. And there's still no water in my cup. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I'm not filling my cup. Like, it wasn't just like a water thing. It was this realization on a level, like, I think I fill my cup. And I preach to my clients and my friends, you got to fill your cup, because you can't pour from an empty cup. And I just had this realization that, oh my God, I think I'm filling my cup, but I'm really not. And I think a lot of us are probably doing it, that we just get so busy and wound up in all the things that we're doing, and we think we're filling our cup, but it really needs to be more full.
Yeah, I think that's such great awareness. Like, well, first of all, I'm curious where the water actually ended up, because something was empty, something happened. Maybe you were pouring over the sink and you were actually pouring it down the drain. Who knows? Which is a whole
It was
nother
on the
metaphor.
counter, and there was no water on the counter, so I don't know where the water went. But there was, and maybe it was night, it was dark, and so I couldn't really see what I was doing. And so I thought I was filling my cup and I wasn't. So
But
go ahead.
even what you just said is such a message in and of itself, right? You thought you were filling your cup and you weren't. And maybe you have a leak, like energetically speaking, right? Like, this is why I so often try and have these type of conversations, to just remind myself of what I'm supposed to be doing. Because when we all finish, the course or the book or the conversation or the thing, we're like, oh yeah, we got this. We can fill up our cup every day. And then little by little, evaporation happens, right? Like, the sun beats in a little too hard that day and just steals a little bit of your water, or you have a minor crack and you don't realize that some person or some event or some group or something is just taking a little bit of your water, right? So you think you're filling it up, but you've got a leak. You've got something is right taking it away. I mean, I think it takes just such good awareness and such an active, like, it takes a conscious effort. Does that make sense? Like, it's not just like, oh, I had one really great experience and now perfect, it's healed forever, you know? It's more like, hey, check on yourself, right? Check on it every day. So what did you do differently since you had that experience?
Well, I'm actually like um I'm sitting down with myself and figuring out like what things actually fill my cup, and how might I fill my cup more. So I haven't had any huge awarenesses yet on what exactly I'm going to do to fill my cup more, but it's something that I'm thinking about, and I'm going to figure it out.
And it's listening, right? Just listening and being aware to what's going on around you, right? Maybe it's right in front of you.
Maybe. All right. We're going to take a really short break here, and then we're going to come on with our guest. Hello, Esther.
Hi, ladies. How are you?
We're great now that we've worked through all these technical difficulties getting you on here.
Well, I know we're going to have an awesome show, so I'm looking forward.
We are,
Welcome.
we are.
Thank you.
So, will you please take a moment and introduce yourself to our audience? Tell them a little bit about what you do and what keeps you passionate about doing that.
Sure. Thank you. So my name is Esther Lamm, and I'm currently the CEO of Lamm Industries, which is a high-end audio manufacturer. Which, when I tell most people when I meet them, like, high-end audio, what? You mean Bose? And I'm like, no. So I have to make this reference that, like, okay, it's like the Bugatti or the McLaren of audio. And that's not to like sound snobbish. It's just to kind of point out that it's machines that are really made with, the highest level of parts and thought process to it. And my father, this is our 30th year. My father was dubbed as one of the top 10 acoustic engineers in the world. And I grew up in this business, in this industry, always kind of knowing one day I'll take over, not really realizing though how exactly, because I was kind of the opposite of my father in the sense of, like, he was, the engineer. He was really a scientist. He loved to say he was a scientist and an engineer and an artist, because for him, creating these amplifiers and these electronics wasn't just to go to mass market. It was really about elevating the soul, and that's what really keeps me passionate, because growing up with a classical music education and going to, I did classical ballet for 10 years. I was exposed at a young age to music that really, and I love all genres of music, not to say, like, I listen to hip hop and I could listen to country and I could listen to rock and pop. But there's something to be said when it's, classical music and you hear all the instruments, it's not synthesized, right? And so when you're listening, you're really elevating the soul. That was one of his goals for humanity, that it really brought up people's consciousness. And that's what really keeps me passionate, that I get to be at the helm with my stepmom and our chief engineer. Unfortunately, my father passed away last year. So, it makes it just so much more meaningful to be able to do this and continue his legacy.
Beautiful, beautiful. Um, while you're talking, it makes me curious because I'm a healer. I have a sound bed, so music comes through. But as you're talking, I'm like, have you guys considered like using this at all for healing purposes?
Yes. So it's so interesting that you say that. We moved to Miami. We moved the headquarters. So we were based in New York, in Brooklyn. And I went to an event. I actually I tried to go every Wednesday. I go to a sound bath, and I'm very into all that. And a friend of mine, he's a rabbi, Rabbi Harry. They're doing like psychedelic healing. Okay. And they opened up a bunch of places, both in Israel and in Miami, a few other places. And we were discussing this, and I would be really curious to bring in a system to see what it does for people, because especially when someone is in that space, right, and they're trying psychedelics, and you're kind of in the zone. Even music from like our phones is uplifting, right? It's like, wow, you're like, in a different space. I could only imagine what it would be like to listen on our system. So yeah, we are considering like to do, kind of a low key activation. And that's what I love about Miami. There's so many opportunities to do cool things like this.
There's definitely opportunity everywhere. And I will tell you that you definitely have two interested parties right here because,
Okay. Okay, so we'll talk offline about
oh,
that.
for sure. When even to this day, but to me, like, there's something about sound that, like you said, just goes into you everywhere. And I've always loved, like, as much as I enjoy listening to music out of a speaker, whatever, I love it like in my head. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to be surrounded by sound the way you're surrounded by water when you go underwater. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Actually, my father, one of the unique things about him, we came here as immigrants. So he literally started the business with $1 and a dream. And a lot of people thought, like, you're crazy. You're not going to like get into this industry where, most people that start, they have capital, it's kind of a generational business. And it's because we didn't have an R&D expense. And that's one of the biggest expenses in manufacturing. That's because he came out with a theory. Basically, he always said that we don't listen with our ears. It's a fully immersive experience. We're listening with our bodies. So he created the theory, basically how we interpret sound and the way sound travels. And based on that, on all the mathematics, right, he was able to very exact, develop each product. So it was always something that I heard, that it's really immersive. It touches us. It's really not just the ears. And it has a power. If you notice, again, I don't knock any genre, but there's certain sounds that make me feel not well. Okay. And it's in certain genres of music. It's like distorting the frequencies. And then there's a reason why, and I'm sure as you're doing the sound baths, there's certain sounds that are literally, it's healing, it's enveloping you, this kind of like cocoon, and you feel well, not just because you're hearing it, you're actually feeling it. So
yeah, I was having this conversation with myself this weekend about, like, we don't see with our eyes and we don't hear with our ears, even though that's what, like, we think we're doing. And then science will tell us that, like, we're actually hearing and seeing with our brain. But, like, I invite people to hear with your heart and hear with your soul, and it's a completely different experience.
I agree.
And
Beautiful.
yeah, and everything is frequency. So music and sound is a very special way to use frequency. And like you said, like some of the music that's out there doesn't feel good, and you need to pay attention to that and don't expose yourself to it if it doesn't feel good. That's your intuition telling you that this isn't necessarily what you should be doing for yourself. And when something feels good, like, follow that and go with that. And
Sure. It's I always say it's interesting. I don't know if you've ever done this, but like if you're watching a scary movie, and I used to in like my youth, but now I stay away from that because I'm like, why would I want to fill my vessel with that kind of imagery and whatnot? But if you take the volume off and you just look at the visual, it's not scary. You see that it's theatrics. But you could actually not be watching, but you hear that scary sound and, the buildup. That's what gets you, nervous and scared. So sound is very powerful. We did an event with a famous Israeli artist, Ron Agam, for Art Basel. And, he asked me, what do you think the highest art form is? So naturally, I thought he would say art because he's an artist. And he said, no, it's music. He said, I listen before I paint, before I create. It's very interesting. There's a lot to learn about sound and the power of it and how to heal actually the world.
Yeah. There's all these theories about creation, but there is the theory that, everything was created from sound. Like the Aborigines believe that Earth was created through the sound of the didgeridoo. And uh, but yes, sound is a creative force, and so choose wisely what you're creating with that sound.
Yeah, for sure.
And how exciting that you've taken over what is now your dad's legacy. Like, let's talk about being a female entrepreneur in this industry. Are there very many women doing what you're doing?
So I would say no. And that's only because, not because there's some barriers to entry. I think really it's based on taste. You know, like I just spent a week in Utah with a friend and our premier dealer. He was one of my father's closest friends. And I basically, I told him I got a crash course in like, in reality, and really, because he kept telling me you still don't really understand what is it that your father achieved and what the product is, right? And so to paint you a picture, he has basically close to $2 million worth of equipment. We're talking about turntables that are $250,000, speakers that are, he has the vintage speakers, the old JBLs, and um and other brands. And again, it's not to show off like, oh, look at me, I can afford this, right? It's more that, the old school design was just very different because of where the recording industry is now. To answer your question, most women weren't really into, even for me growing up with this, I was very nervous using his LP player. That's like $250,000. Oh my gosh, just because the cartridge alone is 30,000,
Right.
So there's all these, moments that I think more men have been into, like into gadgets in general, right? What I feel that we're bringing to the table, and I'm not out there, so look at us, we're, even though we had an article in the Miami Herald that said second generation female entrepreneurs, I'm not riding that angle. I'm not trying to say like, oh, look at you guys, you haven't been allowing women in, because there are quite a few women in the industry also in a similar position, or even as reviewers, which is exciting. I just feel because it's been so gadget based that women felt that there's this barrier to entry, because like, wait, I don't know this. I don't know how many ohms per watt per channel per this. And one of our goals is really to make it more approachable, that you don't really, I don't want to say you have to know nothing. Obviously you should, first of all, you should love music. But to be honest, you could have somebody come set up your system. You could even do, like, for women that are, tech savvy, it's not, especially if you're not using an LP player and you're streaming, or using a DAC, which is a digital analog converter, and then you're able to stream. The setup, it's like setting up a television. So that I feel like that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about to bring into the universe, to be like, you know what, if you love music, you don't have to be a dude. Don't be afraid, and everyone deserves to listen to music in its purest form. So whether you're male or female.
Yeah, absolutely. And as much as this is a, women focused podcast, it's also very male friendly. It's not us versus them. It's not, yay women and bad men. Quite the opposite. It's the equalizing of everything, right? So that, oh my God, I just made a sound reference. That was funny. But it's really about what are our limiting beliefs, right? Because it's accessibility, yes, right? Being exposed to these things. Like now I've seen a lot of nonprofits that are for like young girls to become DJs and things like that, which is really cool. Because you're right, we don't talk about this kind of stuff in school, right? The techniques, the technology behind the sound. But I wanted to ask you about your own limiting beliefs. Like, what limiting beliefs did you have to let go of to get to where you are today?
Well, first of all, the limiting, it's interesting. It's a very interesting question. So at first, I was like, oh, I could do this. I could run a manufacturing company because I had all these other, successes, and I was a fundraiser for 10 years and I knew nothing about it, and I got into that space and I excelled. And then I used to help my husband run his like CBD and retail and whatever it is. And that is one thing that I'm very grateful I inherited from my father's have good brain genes, I guess. I pick up on things, I learn quickly. And so in the beginning I didn't have limiting beliefs, but then when I had to roll up my sleeves, I started to feel like I have these limiting beliefs. Oh, I'll never be able to do this. Who am I kidding? How am I going to run a manufacturing firm? And slowly I've been shedding those beliefs, because you know what, we all start somewhere. And if if you think it and you believe it, you will do it. That is something. My father had extraordinary perseverance, right? Coming as an immigrant, coming to this country, kind of picking up, a second time in his career, because back in the former Soviet Union, he had like 500 people under him. I'm just finding out information that like he ran this brand that there was no private companies in the former Soviet Union. So whatever brand he worked under, they sold overseas, and he was their cash cow. Now, to come here as an immigrant, and he was a little bit older than I am now. I'm 43 right now, so I think the limiting beliefs, it's what we choose to believe. Now, again, I understand that I cannot be an engineer, right? But I could learn enough from my chief engineer to at least understand, and that's what I've been doing, to understand what it is that we are doing, why we are doing it this way. So it's interesting question. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, and a lot of times, they say good leadership is really defined by creating a safe space for your people to be their best, right? So, I think I can't remember who it is, but there's someone who's like, I don't know how to do the job that they do, but I know to give them the space to do it, right? Sure. I know to let them be in their zone of genius. That's beautiful. Sure. That's great awareness. Beautiful. And thank you for sharing that, because our audience really wants to know that everything's going to be okay, right? Sure. Like, you can start something really hard, you can start something that you've never done before, and you just surround yourself with the right people and move forward and take action, and that's it. I love that.
So we are really running out of time here, and but we always like to ask, do you have one juicy golden nugget to gift our audience with before you leave the show today?
Sure. Thank you so much for asking. But I guess I would piggyback off, what we were just talking about. I think that first of all, it's very important to have balance in your life. That I think, will help anyone in their journey, just to have balance, in your personal life. Like you were saying in the beginning of the show, it's so important to fill your cup with the right things. And I would say the advice is really to follow your dreams. I had this dream since I was a child. There were some people that were saying like, sell the company, sell the name, it's not going to work. And you know what? I said, I have to listen to my inner voice. As long as you're connected and that voice is pure and it's coming from a pure place, I say go for it, because we're all in the image of the creator, right? And really we have this like really infinite power if we tap into it, to create and to really achieve what we believe in. So believe in your dreams and go for them. That's my nugget.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for sticking with us through all the technical difficulties today. And wonderful story, wonderful message. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, ladies. Look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah.
Thank you, Esther.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, listeners. Bye-bye.